First time, where was it located? Look at Exodus 19:2. For they had departed from Rephidim, had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. So when God gave instructions to the children of Israelites to build a sanctuary, the message came from Mount Sinai through the instructions through Moses. And the first place where they actually built the sanctuary or pitched the tent, which was a sanctuary, is at the foot of Mount Sinai. Okay? Now, the next question is, what materials did they use to build this sanctuary? Let's read Exodus 25 1. Speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering from everyone who gives it what? Willingly. That's the key. He didn't force people. He said, everyone who gives willingly with his heart. I mean, there's a lot to say about just willingness and heart, isn't it? Some of us are maybe willing to do, but not with a genuine heart. If I don't give, Pastor Mohan may feel bad. He may think I'm not a good. So many things prompt us to give. But God is saying here, what? Bring me an offering from everyone who gives it willingly with his heart. You shall take my offering. Verse 3, and this is the offering which you shall take from them. What is it? Gold, silver, and bronze. When it comes to metals. When it comes to cloth, blue, purple, scarlet thread, fine linen, and goat's hair, ram skin dyed in red, badger skins, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. And then when it comes to precious stones, look, onyx stones, stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. God not only told them to build a sanctuary, He also told them that He needs an offering. He wants it from people, He wants it from their willing heart, and He didn't say just give whatever you give. He didn't say that. What did He say? Give me gold, give me silver, give me bronze, give me purple, give me this. Exactly, He specified what He wants. And that is because I told you, these all represents Jesus in one way. Later you will discover. So where did the material come for the building of the sanctuary? Was it their tithe? It was their free will, wholehearted gifts or offering, whatever you call. Next question. Where did the Israelites get these gold, silver, bronze, and purple? And where did they get them from? Look what happened when they were about to leave the Egypt, what God told them and what happened. Exodus 12:35-36. Now the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses. Moses actually told them to do something. What did he say? Go and ask, yes. And look what they had asked from the Egyptians articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they granted them what they requested. Thus, they plundered the Egyptians. Where did they get this gold, silver, bronze, purple, onyx, and all these precious stones? Moses said, go ask the people. And God softened the hearts of the Egyptians. So when these people went, well, we are leaving, we need your gold, we need your silver. They gave, I believe. Whatever they want, they gave. So that's how they had acquired all these things. Remember, God never took anything from outside the people of Israel. He didn't say, go and get from your neighbors or nothing. What they had, they were to give. Okay, now when it comes to the building itself, He gifted some people to do some work, isn't it? Now, there's two people which all of us know. Exodus 31 speaks about Bezalel and Aholiab, two men who God gave them wisdom in the works of gold, silver, bronze, jewels, and wood. They are the master craftsmen, maybe the main, whoever you call them. God gave them wisdom to do the works of gold in building all those utensils, everything needed. Also, it says Exodus 28, 1-4. Gifted artisans in whom God filled with spirit of wisdom to make garments for priests. Priests' words, tomorrow will be an interesting study. You will not want to miss. I will explain those 8 articles of the dress they wear. But it is also to be particular color and particular shape and particular way of the type of garments the priests wear. So God gave wisdom to certain people just to work on the garments of the priests, while some worked on the gold and silver. And I'm so pleased what God actually did. If you read Exodus 35, God gifted women whose hearts stirred with wisdom to spun the cloth. Everything, I'll tell you how much of cloth was around the whole the camp, the tabernacle, all the curtains, everything was spun by women whom God gave them wisdom how to do it. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, nothing was from outside. Nobody, anybody or any craftsman, they didn't hire anyone. God blessed them with wonderful wisdom and skill that they could build his own sanctuary for them. Is there a lesson for us? I hope you got the lesson, isn't it? Okay, look at what Ellen White says. God desires that his workers in every line shall look to him as the giver of all they possess. All right inventions and improvements have their source in him, who is wonderful in counsel and excellent in working. The skillful touch of the physician's hand, his power over nerve and muscle, his knowledge of the delicate organism of the body is the wisdom of divine power to be used in behalf of the suffering. The skill with which the carpenters use the hammers, the strength with which the blacksmith makes the anvil rings comes from God. He has entrusted men with talents, and he expects them to look to him for counsel. Whatever we do, in whatever department of the work we are placed, he desires to control our minds that we may do perfect work. You may say, I'm only a teacher. You may say, I'm only a healthcare worker. You may say, I'm only a sweeper. I want you to know God is the one who gives that the skill to do it. And when we completely commit ourselves, he says what? He desires to control our minds that we may do perfect work. It may be sweeping, but God expects you to do a perfect work. And when you do it, it's not your doing, it's God's doing. To be able to put your heart and soul and mind in everything that you do. Okay, next question. How long did it take to build the tabernacle? Exodus 19, 1-11 says, in the 3rd month after Israelites left Egypt, the law of God was given. In other words, from the time they left Egypt, came to the Mount of Sinai, it was 3 months' time. Okay, that's where they got the message, the 10 commandments, and the command to build the tabernacle. Now look at the next text, Exodus 40, verse 2, also 17 and 18. The tabernacle, somebody read it for me. Do you have your Bibles? Exodus chapter 40, verse 17 and 18. Or I can read if you don't have. Exodus 40, verse 17. Somebody got it? Okay, let me read. Exodus 40, 17. And it came to pass in the 1st month of the 2nd year, on the 1st day of the month, what happened? That the tabernacle was raised up. When? On the 1st day of the 1st month of the 2nd year, the tabernacle was set up. When did they come to the foot of the mountain? In the 3rd month of the 1st year. When did they erect the tabernacle? On the 1st day of the 1st month of the 2nd year. So how many months between? 9 months. Yeah? So in 9 months' time. But, yeah, it's 9 months. I was reading a commentary on this. Somebody said, it took 9 months for Mary to carry Jesus in his womb before he came to the earth. 9 months pregnancy or 9 months in the womb to conceive. Well, that is just a comparison, not necessarily. But how long did Moses spend? Once God gave them a command, at the 3rd month they were there, but after the 3rd month, God actually calls him. If you read Exodus 24:18, he says, "Come up to the mountain, I want to talk to you." So Moses goes to the mountain and stays there for how long? 40 days and 40 nights. That's when God gives him all instructions how to do. He comes back and he shares with the people. Then God gives them the artisans, the gift and the skill. And the way this, from the time they started building and finished it, it's actually 6 months. How do we know? At least we know it's 9 months, because from third month to the last, according to Bible. Now Ellen White makes it clear on this one, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 349. A period of about half a year was occupied in the building of the tabernacle. So approximately 6 months' time was they took to build this tabernacle. It's all tent, but yet because of the skill it needed, it took them 6 months. I don't know, Ellen White says 6 months, but at least the time period is within that. The Lord dwelled with them from the first year of their journey. So from the third month after they came, God's presence was with them. You remember morning I said he spoke through Mount Sinai, then the tabernacle of meeting that Moses put outside the camp, so that until this tabernacle was built, that was the place they went to God's counsel and wisdom. Okay, how does it look? How should it look? God gave them a pattern, isn't it? After he said, "Let them build me a sanctuary," verse 9 says, "After the pattern I show you." You don't do what you think is best. You do what I tell you to do. God gave everything. And you know what? If you read Exodus 25, verse 9 onwards, measurements. I sometimes wonder, why the measurements? He could have said rectangle shape, but exact measurements. Now, I don't know, I can't point it out. The length is around 100 cubits. 1 cubit is 1.5 feet. So 100 cubits is 150 feet, the length. And what do you call this? Width, is it? 50 cubits, that's around 75 feet. 150 feet length, width 75. So what do you mean then? Half, isn't it? Now, then there is inside ones. The tabernacle itself, which is divided into two, holy place and most holy place, the length of it is only 45 feet, 30 cubits, 45 feet. And within that, 20 feet is the holy place, and then 15 feet is the most holy place. 10 cubits and 20 cubits. I think. Okay. What about the wall of the sanctuary? It is made of fine white linen. Bible only says fine linen. In the Bible, linen means white. Okay, just keep that one. I forgot to tell, the height of the inner sanctuary, I can't point out, where the holy place, most holy place, is 30 feet. 15 feet. But the wall is what is the height of the wall? It is half the height of the holy place and most holy place. Why do you think so? Why is the outer wall half the size of the inner holy place and most holy place? Any guess? Excellent, my sister. This must be the visible sign of God's presence to all the children wherever they are camped. So it's only the half the size of the sanctuary, so that when they look, they can see the holy place. They can see the lamps burning in the holy place. They can see the smoke going up. They can see in the courtyard, the altar of burnt offering, the smoke coming up. As a symbol, visible symbol, God's presence is amongst them. So if the wall was higher than the temple itself, then they don't have that visibility. That's why it's half that. And they're all hooked to the nails or pegs, what you call, around it. You know what Isaiah speaks about Jesus Christ? I will fasten him in a peg. Jesus was almost like pegged to the earth for our sins, as a symbol of that. The wall of the sanctuary has 3. The white linen. White is a representation of the righteousness of Christ. It has a bronze. In the Bible, bronze is a symbol of God's judgments. Silver is a symbol of, or a representation of, redemption. Whenever something have to be purchased, you pay in silver. That's why it's a symbol of redemption. So that's how the structure itself is. Now, the entrance to the gate. How many gates are there to the tabernacle? Anyone? 3? Okay. How many gates do you think it has? 12? Only one gate. Tabernacle has only one gate. Why do you think? Jesus is the only way, isn't it? To salvation. Okay, but this gate, for the gate of the court, there shall be a screen 20 cubits long, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet, and of course, fine woven linen. Made of a weaver, it shall have 4 pillars and 4 sockets. Some people drew it like this, 4 colors together. This is actually me and Rosie when we went to GC, General Conference. Anybody attended General Conference sessions? Yes, usually they have this sanctuary display. Have you seen it? They pitch exact measurements in some place so that the members could see how the sanctuary looked. When we went, this is what we saw. Those 4 colors, they pitched it like that. And I want you to know every color has a meaning in the life of the shikam wood or acacia wood is talking about the corruptible humanity, gold, incorruptible deity, about God, silver, redemption, brass, survived the judgment. And the colors of the cloth, purple, Jesus as king, white linen as a servant, a righteous, scarlet, Jesus' humanity, he bled and died, blue is divine as in gospel. Don't worry, I will not ask too many questions on that, okay? But just for your information. So there is only one gate and it has 4 colors, all represent the ministry and work of Jesus Christ. Articles in the courtyard, as we said, there are 2 articles. What are they? Altar of burnt offering. As you enter inside, right in the middle, you first see is the altar of burnt offering. As you go a little across, you see a basin full of water, what they call laver. This is what they built in GC, General Conference. We went to Atlanta 2010. Just a model how it would have looked with the measurements, exact measurements. Then that's the laver basin. Rosie is washing her sins in that one. Okay, so that the tabernacle itself, it had 4 coverings. No, the main tabernacle where the holy place, most holy place, it has 4 layers. Inner layer made of 10 curtains of fine. Remember how many? Inner cover itself has 10 curtains of fine woven linen, blue, purple, and scarlet, with artistic design of cherubims. Then it is covered again by goat's hair. Then it is covered again by ram's hair dyed with red. Then it is covered on the top with what? Badger skin. They call it sea cow. I don't know what kind of from animal they took it, or dagong. Now this is how it looks. Just the sanctuary itself, it is covered with what? How many layers? 4 layers. First linen, then goat, then rams, then the badger one. Why do you think so? Where was this pitched? In the wilderness. It has to withstand storms, rains, whatever. And this cover, not even a drop of rain would go. That's how they designed and built to be able to keep it secure. And not only that, the literal presence of God stays in the most holy place, so nothing should be seen outside. It's not like walls like this, it's all cloth, but they did it in such a way. One is for protection from the climate. The second is there's no visibility of the presence of God outside the most holy place. They all represent Jesus' ministry in one way or the other. Now, in the first covering, what do you see? As we read, there is the white linen had purple, scarlet, blue colors with artistic designs of angels in ascending form, like how it is. No, you see that. What is it? It's always angels around God's throne, carrying our prayers with Him. That's the same. Throughout at a tabernacle, you will see whenever angel is put in the artistic designs, they're always in the ascending order as though they're taking prayers to God. The first covering of the tabernacle was made by, I think I said this, blue represents Jesus, Son of God, purple, Jesus the King, Scarlet, Jesus the suffering one. Linen, Jesus the righteous. Only these four colors. You just have to remember these four colors, because in every way you come across these four: blue, purple, scarlet, white. This is complete description of Jesus' life and ministry through these colors. He was the Son of God, He was the King, He is the suffering one. Of course, He is our righteous one. Cherubims, angels in the life and ministry. Were there angels in the life and ministry of Jesus? From the birth, isn't it? His birth was announced by angels, and his death, his resurrection, angels. From the beginning till the end, angels are a part of the redemption story. That's why all these things designed with the angels, representing again the ministry of angels in the life of Jesus. I think this is enough. I have explained that. So that's how all the four coverings looked, so that it is secure. It can withstand wind, storm, rain. At the same time, nobody can peep into the holy and most holy place to see, except the assigned priests and the high priest. The door of the tabernacle, this is the tabernacle, that means holy place and most holy place. It has 5 pillars. And what colors again? Same. I want you to remember those 4 colors, same colors. It has 5 pillars that are there for the tabernacle itself. Veil in the tabernacle. What is dividing the holy place and the most holy place? There's a veil. Okay. So you shall make a veil woven of what? Blue, purple, scarlet, and white, fine linen. It shall be woven with an artistic design of cherubims. Look what God told Moses. In that you have to put the artistic design of cherubims. You shall hang it upon the 4 pillars of acacia wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be gold upon 4 sockets of silver. Now, this is what is dividing the holy place from most holy place. 4 pillars. The veil has 4 colors, cloth, and the angels as the artistic design on it. Articles in the holy place, I think you already know, there is 3. One is the 7-branched candlestick. It's not 7 candles, it's 1 candle with 7 branches. It is on the south side. On the north is the table of shewbread, and then of course I forgot to put, I think, the altar of incense. When it comes to the most holy place, it is the Ark of the Covenant. On top of the Ark are 2 cherubims, Ark covered by mercy seat. Inside the Ark we have the law of God, 10 commandments, golden pot of manna, and Aaron's rod. Outside the Ark or beside the Ark, the law of Moses. Now, I don't know if you can clearly see. Yeah, this picture. Inside, 10 commandments, pot of manna, Aaron's rod. Outside, if you can see on to my right, to your left, like a scroll, blue color, all the laws of Moses were also put in the most holy place, not inside the Ark of the Covenant, but outside. I think it's a clear indication to showing the difference between the moral law and the ceremonial law. So that was only kept outside the ark, not inside the ark. And the top of the ark is covered by a seat, which is called mercy seat. On top of the seat are 2 cherubims facing each other with their wings bowing down, looking into the ark as a symbol of their reverence and in the presence of God. And on the seat is something called Shekinah glory, which means the presence of God Himself. When I explain to you the most holy place, I think it's on Friday, I will give you all the details. But just for now, I want you to know this is how God asked them to lay out the sanctuary. Now, the picture if itself looks like this, I wonder how the reality would have been, isn't it? Man's imagination itself looks so spectacular, but I wonder how the real one would have been. The presence of God on the mercy seat, the Shekinah glory. Yeah, this is a bit clearer. 3 things. Okay, and also God asked them to make 2 silver trumpets for the service of the sanctuary. Why do you think so? Yeah, look for the calling. Look at Numbers chapter 10. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Make 2 silver trumpets for yourself. You shall make them of hammered work. You shall use them for calling the congregation and for directing the movements of the camps." What are they used for? If you want to call the congregation, you can use them. And also for directing where to stop, when to stop, what to do. He gives more clarity. When they blow both of them, all the congregation shall gather before you at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. In other words, if 2 trumpets are blown at one time, it is telling you what? All of you come and gather here. Are you with me? And then what else? Verse 4. But if they blow only one, then the leaders, the heads of the divisions of Israel shall gather to you. You know, every tribe has a leader and this thing. So if they blow only one trumpet, only the heads should come. If you blow the 2 trumpets, the whole congregation have to gather before me. When you sound the advance the second time, then the camp that lie on the south side shall begin their journey. They shall sound the call for them to begin their journeys. And when the assembly is to be gathered together, you shall blow, but not sound the advance. The sons of Aaron, the priest, shall blow the trumpets, and these shall be to you as an ordinance forever throughout your generations. Who should blow the trumpet? Not anyone, only the sons of Aaron and his descendants afterwards. When you go to war in your land against the enemy who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before the Lord your God, and you will be saved from your enemies. There's a big lesson here. When an enemy is coming near to you and you are attacked, what you do? Don't rush and go everywhere. Blow the trumpet. When I hear the trumpet blown, I will defend you, he says. Also, in the day of your gladness, in your appointed feasts, and at the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offering and over the sacrifice of your peace offering, and they shall be a memorial for you before your God. I am the Lord your God. That's silver trumpets. What else you think? Look at how the arrangement, and now we will look at that. The pillar of cloud and fire. Numbers 9. Now, on the day that the tabernacle was raised up, listen to this. The cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the testimony. From evening until morning, it was above the tabernacle like the appearance of fire. From when? From evening until the morning means all night, the cloud looked like fire. What do you think? Fire it gives what? Not only light, it also gives you the warmth in the night, isn't it? What an amazing heating system. What happened then? So it was always the cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. Can you imagine? Just the one cloud, nighttime it turns into fire-like thing, daytime it's a cloud. So daytime cloud, why? To protect you from sun, heat, give you that coolness and all. Amazing system God had in him. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, after the children of Israel would journey. And in the place where the cloud settled, there the children of Israel would pitch their tents. So all of a sudden, if it starts moving, you move. You move. And when it stops moving, you stay there. You pitch your tents. How long? Nobody knows. They just have to keep observing this cloud for their movements. At the command of the Lord, the children of Israel would journey. At the command of the Lord, they would camp. As long as the cloud stayed above the tabernacle, they remained encamped. Even when the cloud continued long, many days above the tabernacle, the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and did not journey. In other words, no matter how long it stopped there, they have to stay there. They can't say, it's too long, can we move on now? There's no food here, nothing like that. You have to just observe the cloud. So it was when the cloud was above the tabernacle a few days, according to the command of the Lord, they would remain encamped, and according to the command of the Lord, they would journey. So it was when the cloud remained only from evening until morning. When the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they would journey. Can you imagine how inconvenienced you and I would feel? They just pitched it in the evening, and early morning, it started moving. So what do? They keep moving. They have no choice. Then they would journey, whether by day or by night. They can't say it's midnight, don't disturb my sleep, nothing like that. Whenever the cloud was taken up, they would journey. Whether it was 2 days, a month, and a year that the cloud remained above the tabernacle, the children of Israel would remain encamped and not journey. But when it is taken up, they would journey. At the command of the Lord, they remained encamped, and at the command of the Lord, they journeyed. They kept the charge of the Lord at the command of the Lord by the hand of Moses. So much command of the Lord. Is there a lesson for us? It is not my will, it is God's will. No matter how inconvenient, how risky, how uncomfortable, we are to do the will of God, not my will, not my convenience. Exodus 40:38, for the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, by fire it was by night. I think we said that. So can you imagine, as they see the cloud moving, they move, they keep moving. If there is a sick person, what do? They carry them on their shoulders or something else, but they have to move. You can't leave anything behind. Imagine how this picture itself gives that glorious look. Nighttime, it's like fire. Daytime, it's cloud. So the tabernacle was the hub of Israel's lifestyle. It is their lifestyle. The layout of the camp itself. Jesus lived only for 33 and over. The camp layout, scholars actually compare it, Jesus living among his people. The camp layout symbolizes Jesus living amongst us. What do you think is the distance between the camp and the sanctuary? That means where the sanctuary is in the middle, so all the camps around. Look at Numbers 2:1 and 2. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, every one of the children of Israel shall camp by his own standard. Standard means they have a symbol, they have a flag by which they have to stay. Beside the emblem of his father's house, they shall camp. NKJV says some far distance. I think KJV says far distance from the tabernacle of meeting. Bible doesn't say how far the tent must be, but it says they should keep distance. If you see Joshua chapter 3, when they were crossing the river Jordan, Joshua says 2,000 cubits. Nobody should be come near to this one. 2,000 cubits is around a mile distance. So now some scholars believe, according to Jewish writings, the distance, the radius of the camp of Israelites is around 12 miles. But the distance between the tent of tabernacle and the first tent of the children of Israelites is at least 1 mile. What do you think? Why do you think is that distance necessary? So that everybody from their own tent, when they come out of their tent and see, they can see the tabernacle clearly. If they are camped so close, what would happen? They can't see. So the distance was to have a clear view and vision. Half of you are asleep. Israelites, and tomorrow I don't think you'll get quiz questions answers. Anyway, I understand good food and afternoon is not the good time. Israelites encampment. Then these are the ones who were numbered. God actually numbered everybody and told who should stay in which side. That's the point. And according to their symbol, according to the flag or the standard Bible calls, everybody have to stay in their own way. Now, how many tribes are there? Children of Israelites, 12. They are the 12 children of Jacob, isn't it? Now, Jacob had how many wives? Two, and then, of course, other 2 are his forced wives. Wives forced them to take. Leah had how many children? 6. Leah's children are Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. And then Leah's servant Zilpah, when Leah stopped conceiving and it was Rachel who was conceiving, what did Leah do? She sent the servant, go sleep with my husband, I want more children. And then she went, and then through her, Jacob had 2 more children. Who are they? Gad and Asher. Now Rachel had 2 of her own children, Joseph and Benjamin. And when she stopped conceiving, she calls her lady servant and says, go sleep with my husband, I want more kids. So she goes, that is Bilhah. She goes and sleeps. And then Dan and Naphtali. Jacob would have enjoyed his life. And they are the heroes of faith. Today we are not allowed more than 1 woman. I don't know. Well, today is to manage 1 woman is managing those many people. Anyway. So I want you to know all 12 sons are not from Leah and Rachel. 4 of them are from the servants that he had. So these are the 12, but anyway, they are his sons. Those 12 sons became 12 tribes. And then these 12 sons had 4 symbols, east, west, south, north. Maybe this picture will make it clear. Now the people on the west, the camp of Ephraim, it's called. I want you to see the number of people also. Bible gives all these details. It is in Numbers chapter 2, verse 1 up to chapter 3, verse 39. In your free time, you read. It gives exactly each tribe how many people and which side they have to camp under which banner. On the west, it is the camp of Ephraim, it's called, and they have 3, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim, and the numbers 35,400, 32,200. The total will be 108. I want you to see this one. On the west, 108,000. On the north, 157,000. In the south, 151,000. What about in the east? 186. So which side is the least number of people? West, isn't it? Not all four sides are equal number. Based on the camp, based on their arrangements, it's different. And that has, and maybe you can see it later. And as I said, each of them have camp of Ephraim, camp of Dan on the north, camp of Reuben in the south, and camp of Judah in the east. And each of them have a symbol which they represent. Cow, eagle, lion, and the man of a face. Do you see this in anywhere else? Look at four beasts of Revelation 4. Revelation 4, 6-8. Behold, the throne, there was a sea of glass like crystal. And in the midst of the throne and around the throne were how many? 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion. The second living creature was like a calf. And the third living creature had a face like a man. And the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. Where are they? Around the throne of God. Now look at this one. The camp, the symbols of the camp of children of Israel represented with the same symbols. They surround the tabernacle of God. In the middle is the presence of God. Around them is these symbols with their flags and with their symbols, similar to what we see in the heavenly scene. The 4 living creatures each had 6 wings full of eyes around and within, and they do not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. What is their duty? To praise God 24/7. So God designed his people to be around him in these symbols, to praise him and to stay in his protective vicinity. That's how some picture anyway. Some scholar by the name of Marian Therese, he actually compares the same animals to the Gospels, the 4 Gospels. He says in his commentary, the man symbolized Saint Matthew because this Gospel begins by stating the genealogy of the ancestry of Christ. The lion is Saint Mark, who early in his Gospel speaks of a voice crying in the wilderness. The ox, the sacrificial animal of the Old Testament, symbolizes Saint Luke, whose Gospel opens with the sacrifice offered by Zacharias. The eagle, believed to be the only animal that could gaze straight into the light of the sun, is St. John, who in his Gospel soars into the mystery of the incarnation of God so naturally and contemplates it so profoundly that he seems like an eagle's flying towards the sun. Well, he's just trying to compare and see how even the Gospel fits into these 4 descriptions of the children of Israel camped around the tabernacle. Then that is camp. That is an extended camp, but there is another camp called the Levite camp. Now, Levites came from which tribe? Levi. Levi is one of the sons of Jacob. And Levi had how many sons? I don't expect you to know, but he had 3 sons, okay? And one of the son is Kohath, from whom comes who? Moses and all that, Moses, Aaron and these things. Okay, now this is how the camp, the Levites were to camp immediate close to the tabernacle, while the rest of them spread outside. Very close to the tabernacle is the Levites. The Levites, okay, next. This is how. Immediate to the tabernacle is the Levite that must camp. Further than them is the rest of the camp. Look at this picture. On the east is Moses and the priest. That means Moses, Aaron and his sons towards east. Now the rest of the Merari and Kohath and Gershom. Levi had 3 sons. Merari, Kohath and Gershom. Now Moses and Aaron are actually the sons of Kohath tribe, Kohath descendancy. But Moses and his brother Aaron and his sons were given special place at the east because they were the priests, they were the leading ones. But the rest of the priests occupied the other 3 directions. And after that is the spread of the camp of the children of Israel. This is at the foot of the Mount of Sinai, where the children of Israelites encamped, and something like this it would have looked, the original camp. Now, they also, each tribe had its own colors according to the flags. We don't want to get into that. Now, if you see the arrangement in this manner, you see the west has less number, and the highest number which side? East. Then to the north 157, to the south 151. So the south and the north seems to have somewhat closer number, equal, isn't it? But the east is long, the west is. Somebody actually said it looks like a cross in the wilderness, the way it is arranged, because that's how God told them to arrange, to symbolize. The camp itself is a symbol of Jesus himself. In fact, somebody drew this. If you see the camp of Israelites from top of Mount Sinai, when they put there, maybe that's Moses and Joshua, I don't know. When you see it from top there, it looks like this somewhat when the arrangement. So how does this picture look like? Boys and girls? It looks like cross, isn't it? In fact, this is actually, by the Bible scholars, they call it Balaam's view. You know, when he was asked to curse children of God, he went on top of the mountain. When he looked at the camp, it looked like so glorious, he couldn't curse them. He tried cursing, but what came? The blessings came out. So even the way it is arranged is a symbol of Jesus' life and ministry and death. It is how it is seen. After everything was built, and look at what Ellen White describes. With eager interest, the multitudes of Israel crowded around to look upon the sacred structure. While they were contemplating the scene with reverent satisfaction, the pillar of cloud floated over the sanctuary and descending enveloped it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. There was a revealing of the divine majesty, and for a time even Moses could not enter. With deep emotions, the people beheld the token that the work of their hands was accepted. Can you imagine? They are the ones who spun the wheel and the cloth, and everything they did. And now when God descended there in the form of a cloud, how happy they will be. For you to know that God accepted your offering itself is a joyous thing, isn't it? So they were so glad. There was no loud demonstration of rejoicing. A solemn awe rested upon all. But the gladness of their hearts welled up in tears of joy, and they murmured low, earnest words of gratitude that God has condescended to abide with them. What an amazing day that would have been when it was erected and they saw the power of God come and dwell among them. Something like that. So even everything inside, as I said, tomorrow, day after, we will explain how every article represents Jesus, but just for layout itself as a symbol. Outside the camp is Jesus like living among human beings, and within the camp Jesus is represented by every article. The shape of the way people are asked to stay around, if you see, it looks like a cross to us to say, again representing Jesus Christ. So you can see the layout itself speaks about Jesus and his ministry on this earth. Tomorrow night, I will explain. He has 8 pieces of cloth. Do you know something? Even the underpants, what you call undergarments or underpants, the measurement was given. What type of undergarments the priest must wear. The measurements were given. We will discover all that, the hat and the breastplate. Have you heard of Urim and Thummim? You know how they work? We will discover that, and why God did, and the way they are anointed. And they were not even allowed to cry even if a family member died among them. All those details we'll study tomorrow to see how Jesus fits into the high priestly ministry of the sanctuary. God bless us all. Gracious Father, Lord, truly prepare me and prepare each one of us to be your sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. As we learn about the earthly sanctuary that you established to reveal to us the plan of salvation and your sacrifice for us, may we make our hearts your sanctuary, that you may dwell amongst us dwell in us and shine through us. Lord, take us home safely this evening and bring us back again tomorrow to learn more truths about your sanctuary through the ministry of the high priest. In Jesus' name I pray.